Welcome to the show in a brand new week. IB Nation Sports Talk. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. Glad to be back. Vince has been under the weather a bit. I've been out and about traveling to a couple of different states with Notre Dame women's basketball. It was a longer regular season trip than we've had before. But
yeah, that was very similar to like a ACC tournament. Kind of a trip, wasn't it? I mean,
it was like 4.5 days by the time it was all said and done. Trust me, I had a suitcase full of dirty clothes when I came back that I get
a lot of downtime. I would imagine that when it's one thing when you're there with not I shouldn't say people you know or people you don't know. I mean, you know the people you travel with, but like you're kind of your own entity.
Still different,
yeah.
Because Friday, we half the day Friday was a bus ride from Charlottesville, Virginia, down to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And then Saturday was pretty much, it was like, there were a couple team meals and stuff like that. But other than that, it was pretty much do your own thing. And, ended up watching football at night. So
that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the old days, there were like a couple, that go out and have a couple pops, with some off time and stuff like that. It's a different crew, though.
Yeah, these days. I remember stories from back when you used to travel with the baseball team.
Yes,
that is not, I would imagine, the way things are when you're traveling with the women's basketball team.
No, it's a little different.
Throw it out there.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with Vince being under the weather and me being gone, and we were even, we had originally planned the Friday show. We had all that, but because of the bus ride and the timing of that, we went straight to a restaurant for dinner right off the bus ride. So we couldn't, work out a time to get things done. I think Brian had some kind of show on Friday. I'm not exactly sure when his show was, but in any case, we are back.
Yes.
We'll have shows for the next few days. I'm actually going to be traveling on Friday again this week because we're going to UConn.
That's right. We have to make a decision about Friday, don't we? I remember a text somewhere there in the fog for me that there's something we have to decide about Friday.
Right. And I'll have to go back and look at that again, and we'll get that figured out.
I don't remember.
At some point. Yes.
We'll try to have a show on Friday. We'll give it a shot.
Crazy, not real crazy, mostly chalk, I guess. NFL playoffs over the weekend.
Good games, don't you think? Like they were competitive games from what I can remember. Like, I mean, they all run together.
The only one that really wasn't competitive turned out to be the Ravens-Texans game. It was at least competitive for a half.
Yeah, that's true.
Before the Ravens kind of took it over.
Because it was 10-10 at halftime, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really tight. Because I kind of had a feeling, I didn't, there's no money down or anything, but I had a feeling, man, maybe Houston pulls this off because the Ravens have struggled in the playoffs before and whatever else. But
they're just put together this year, though. They've got a lot of answers to a lot of questions on that roster. You know what I mean? And I feel like the Texans are still, they're not there yet. They're getting there. They're on the verge. Like maybe they're even a year ahead of schedule, maybe for when they thought that they would be in the playoffs making a run. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it just, I don't know. That was a lot for them to overcome, especially on the road and in the cold and all that other stuff too. Might have been different if it was down in Houston, indoors, controlled environment.
Sure.
But yeah.
Lamar Jackson's good though. That's my biggest takeaway from that game. Lamar Jackson's good. A lot of people wish they would have been bidding for Lamar Jackson last offseason. Atlanta might not be looking for a new head coach if they had got in the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes when they had the opportunity to. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's only 2 home teams have lost in the first 2 weekends.
Good point.
Cowboys.
Yeah.
Buffalo yesterday. Only 2 home teams have lost.
It was on a platter for Buffalo, and I feel like they blew it. I really do. They did not take advantage of the multitude of mistakes that Kansas City made. And this was the year. Like they had all these parallels pregame between Brady and Manning and Mahomes and Allen, and like it would all set up for Allen to win this one. But I don't know, man. Like I saw a tweet actually right before the show, and it showed like the salary cap hit for Josh Allen and what his contract was going to be towards the team. And, obviously it incrementally goes up over the past few years. It jumps from like $15-18 million or whatever to like $47 million next year.
Right.
Like massive hit like that. Yes, you got to pay your quarterback, but man, you're going to have a hard time putting a team around him.
Yeah. A lot of similarities with him and Dak, and he'll never get the criticism, Dak. To me, I will say this because I texted Jesse this yesterday. I like Josh Allen's a really good quarterback, but entirety of the Buffalo Bills roster not nearly as talented as the one down in Dallas. They're very well coached though to get to where they are.
That's very true.
That's the compliment that I will give them. Quarterback standpoint, there's a lot of hype on Josh Allen. I don't feel like he gets near the criticism in times like this because it's like, oh, well, he had to face Patrick Mahomes, like you brought up the Brady, Peyton. Oh, he had to face Mahomes. What do you expect? Whatever. But this game was in Buffalo. It was there for you to win. Like there are no excuses to me. You had the opportunity. And when that clock started running down, they got to the 2-minute warning. I thought, man, Buffalo is going to end up walking out of there with the win. And they didn't score the entire fourth quarter.
They found a way to blow it, man. I tell you what, I was pretty surprised.
I don't think Allen gets near the criticism that he deserves because
the Bills don't have the following. They don't have the following that the Cowboys.
And that's it. That's it. There's just not nearly the expectation on maybe from the Bills Mafia there is, but
it's such a smaller group of people than who follow the Cowboys. And I mean, you've said it yourself many times, so I'm not putting words in your mouth, but like you watch, Good Morning Football and all these different things. They're always talking about the Cowboys. They're not talking about the Bills as much. You know what I mean? When in the off season and during the regular season, the Bills come up in the postseason.
Josh Allen's not leading off the show like
I'm saying,
Prescott. Because and I don't want to get hung up on the Dallas angle, but because that's a week ago now at this point. But most of the talk all week has been about Dak. That was a complete team failure, and to me, it's more a failure of the coaching staff. The preparation, the day in and day out preparation. It's much more a failure about that than it was the quarterback. But all the conversation has been about the quarterback really since then, or at least it went from there was the McCarthy conversation for a couple days, but most of the criticism has been more of it anyway. I think has been at the quarterback than it's even been on the head coach. There were a lot of excuses. Like media excuses that started or rationalization type stuff, revolving around Jerry Jones, why he's keeping McCarthy and all that. Like, I feel like Dak has gotten a lot more of the heat. And I think that it needed to be more on the coaching staff. And I even heard today that like from a Jerry Jones standpoint, he puts most of the blame on that loss on Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator, that he puts on the head coach. It's like, okay, you had a bad game, but like you're going to put the blame exclusively on him. Okay, whatever.
Wow.
Whatever you want to do.
It's Jerry's world.
Yeah. Not to get sidetracked, but this conversation we're having right here kind of got me thinking about Notre Dame playoffs, college football playoffs a year from now, because the thing is that, the pool is expanding from 4 to 12, but I think that is going to, I think ultimately it's going to really affect year in and year out, how we think, because right now it's like, oh, you got a great chance. You got a better chance to get in. You're going to feel good about that up front, but how long is it going to take until just getting there isn't good enough, or just winning 1 or 2 games, because you've got to win, multiple rounds to advance in the college football playoff, just like the NFL. It's going to be much more like the NFL playoffs now, as opposed to what we've seen, so like, the question is, how is this expanded field? How is it going to change how we think about the success or failure of a Notre Dame season? What do you think about that for starters?
Well, it'll change things because people are going to have to get used to the new terminology, right? Because Notre Dame, so they make the playoff next year and they don't win any games. Well, that's not good. That's not good enough. That's a failure. But then you'd be like, well, they made the playoff. Well, we got to get used to the new terminology. Finishing it in the top 12 and making the playoff is like going to a New Year's Six game. That's what it is.
Right.
Right. So you've got to be able to go in there and you got to win that game. And that was the expectation going into this year, was getting to the New Year's Six and winning it. Like, that was my expectation. That was my floor of an expectation this year. It wasn't to make the playoff. That was, an expectation, I suppose. But the floor, get to a New Year's Six, win it, and then you win, you've got a great launching point to the next year, right?
Sure.
So we have to change our terminology, because if this is next year and it's the same team and I have the same expectations, the expectation would be to make the playoff and win a game in the playoff. That would be the expectation. So we have to change like our vocabulary to match the expectations. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, but what's like I understand like what you're saying right there, but then when you sit and you kind of step back and you look at it, okay, not only has like Notre Dame hasn't won a New Year's Six bowl in more than 30 years
93
at this point, right?
Yep.
So now you're essentially, just to get to the championship game, going to have to win 3 games of essentially equal caliber.
Sure.
With barring upsets, each round is going to get a little bit tougher to advance, so
Absolutely.
it's like at some point, again, like where we are right now, it's like everyone's expecting that Notre Dame is going to get into the playoff a year from now. I think most Notre Dame fans, when I say everyone, it's like everyone's expecting that a year from now. And then, just like you said, the basic expectation is you're going to win that game. Well,
sure.
How many times of just doing that are the expectations going to swing pretty quickly? Like, just like with Josh Allen. Okay, the Buffalo Bills went forever without getting in the playoffs. Now they're in the playoffs every year, but
Sure.
You got to play Patrick Mahomes every year.
Well, yeah,
you're not going anywhere. Just like with the Dallas Cowboys. You're in the playoffs. You're winning you're winning 12 games in the regular season.
Right.
But what it's not doing anything for you once you get to the playoffs. And it's going to change. I think it's gonna, it's pretty quickly, depending on success or failure, it's going to change how we think about a season ultimately. Like, it's great you're in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like taking a look at Mike Bray in the NCAA, like with his tournament success. Great, you made the tournament, but you're not going anywhere. With the exception of a couple years, you're not going anywhere. You maxed out most of the time at the Sweet 16, and you had more first and second round exits overall. And so like people become dissatisfied at some point.
Oh, and they will become. I mean, look, we're talking about Notre Dame fans here, right? The expectation is to win a national championship every year.
Yes.
That's the unrealistic expectation every single year. That's not going to change, right? When you're talking about expectations from people that follow the team closely from a, realistic standpoint, I think that every year you go in with a different, scenario and a different perspective and all that. But what Marcus Freeman is doing from a roster building standpoint, the floor is making the playoff. That's the floor from here on out. I would
pretty
say
much every year is college.
It has to be.
It's playoff or bust, right?
It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, okay, 4 out of 5 years, you got to make the playoffs. 3 out of 4 years, you got to make whatever number you want to throw out there. You got to make the playoff 4 out of 5 years. That's the expectation. Okay, you can have an off year. Nobody will like it when they're in it, right? But when you look at the big picture, okay, you had an off year, whatever, back to what you normally do, okay? I'm fine with that. That should be the expectation. You're Notre Dame. You're Notre freaking Dame. You should be in the playoff every year if it's 12 teams. You absolutely should be. It's how many games are they going to win once they get in? Are they hosting, a first round game? Then you get into the nuances and, things of that nature. But that's going to vary from year to year. But every year, I think, should be the expectation to make the playoff. And I don't think that's unfair. I really don't. I don't think it's unfair to expect Notre Dame to be a top 11 team every year.
I think you have to. And I think that's going to be their expectation every year. But it also can't, like, their own expectation can't just be, well, get to the playoffs. It's obviously got to be more than that.
Right.
Because again, like you've already been in a 4-team playoff and you lost these lopsided games. And again, like spinning it back to what the expectations turn into, it's like, okay, that was great, but we got our doors blown off a couple of times, and that wasn't good enough, and a lot of people, you Brian included, were like, it's time to move on from Brian Kelly. He's reached the ceiling.
He hit his ceiling.
He's going to reach. You have to go somewhere else. And I was kind of, I could see that sort of line of thinking, but there are other times it's like, man, they haven't been this good in more than a couple of decades. There's no assurances that you can do better.
But it does get stale though, right? I mean,
it definitely got stale.
The message, I think, gets stale after a while as well. I think some of the things that, coaches do or things that are happening in a program, they get stale or they become, we got to kind of look at this a little bit closer maybe than we were looking at it before. Maybe winning some of those games, blinded us to a couple of facts or a couple of things or allowed us to look in a different direction. And I think once you do something enough times, it's like, okay, you're being successful, yes, but are you being as successful as you can be? Is this the ceiling? I think that's what we have to ask ourselves as Notre Dame fans, as analysts or whatever. Is there a glass ceiling for Notre Dame? Can they ever win a national championship again? I think that's a legitimate question right now. Of course, I think it's a yes. I think they can, but they haven't won since I was 7.
Well, and that's the thing.
It's been a long time.
Like, is it getting easier or is it getting harder? Entry is getting easier because it went from 2012, only 2 teams get, BCS championship game. That was it. Then they expanded to a 4-team playoff. Okay. They made it a couple of times in an 8-year, 10-year span or whatever it was. And now they're going to expand it to 12. But again, you've got to win 3 of those. You've got to win 3 times if you're Notre Dame, because you're never going to have a first round bye. You've got to win 3 times to get to the championship. You've got to win 4 games in the playoff to win a national championship. So,
I would argue though that all of those teams that are top 4 have to win all those games too, because the conference championship, you got to win that one in order to get a bye in the first place.
Yeah.
And so that's why I personally have no problem with Notre Dame not being able to be a top 4 and getting that bye. It doesn't matter to me because they get the bye while those other 4 teams are playing the conference championship game. Those are playing games now, guys. If you lose the conference championship game, you're not getting a bye in the first round, right? So that's a play-in game. You have to be a conference champion to get a bye.
Well, to get a bye, to get a bye, you've got to be one of the top 4 conference champions, to get a bye in the first round. Yeah,
that conference championship weekend, that is a play-in game to get a bye.
Right.
Notre Dame's sitting back, not playing that.
Notre Dame doesn't have to play that. That's right. So, we've talked about that before. Notre Dame is essentially giving up its right to have a bye because they don't have to play in a conference championship game. And like Brad asked if they would join a conference to get home field advantage, they can get home field advantage without being, in a conference. They just don't get a first round bye. Like if they are undefeated, 12-0, they're going to be the number 5 seed.
They'll be the 5 seed.
Most likely, right? Yeah. And if you're the number 5 seed, you're going to get to host a first round game.
The group of 5 team at Notre Dame.
Right. If you're the 5, 6, 7, or 8 seed, if your seeds 5 through 8, you would get to host a first round playoff game. So that has nothing to do with whether or not you're in a conference. So there's no benefit there's no extra benefit to Notre Dame for being it. The only benefit is you potentially would get a first round bye. But
right.
I mean, all that does is, okay. Just like I'm trying to, it didn't affect either of the number one seeds this weekend. It almost affected the 49ers. They had a first round bye. They almost lost to the Packers.
I mean, Notre Dame just gets their bye a week ahead of everybody else. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
They just don't get their bye the same week.
That's actually a really good way to look at it is they get a week to rest. Actually, they'll get a few more weeks to rest because there'll be, like a gap in between when the playoffs actually start and all that kind of stuff.
So they get their bye ahead. They get their bye before the top 4 picks or, the top 4 teams get their bye. They all get byes last time I checked. So it's fine.
Yeah. So Irish AJ says winning 3 games versus winning 2 is a major advantage for the teams with byes. I mean,
you still got to win the conference championship.
Right. You have to win that conference championship game to get the bye. So you still have to play a game.
You got to play that game.
It's just a matter of it's really semantics. It's just a matter like a shell game. Like it's just a matter of where the game, is played and what it means. Notre Dame doesn't have to play that. The other teams all have to play that game potentially. Now, remember, there are also going to be teams that don't even like 3rd or 4th teams from a conference, Big Ten, SEC, whatever it happens to be, that are going to make the playoffs.
Right.
Most likely they're not going to be, I would say, like if you looked at it from a statistical perspective, when I say most likely because they're not one of the top 2 teams in their conference, therefore not playing in the conference championship game, they're probably also going to have to go on the road.
Right.
In the first round of the playoffs. They're not going to get to host a playoff game is what I'm saying. Even though they're not going to have to play in that conference championship game.
It's going to be tough with the conference realignment and everything else for 3 teams from the same conference to make it on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? I think the winner and whoever they decide is the second best team, whether that's the team that lost in the conference championship, or whether that's a team that maybe should have been in the conference championship but wasn't. So now they're the number 2 team after however you want to look at it. I think 3 teams getting in is going to be tough. So I still feel like those teams are going to still have an extra game that they had to play against a obvious top flight opponent and now a top 4 seed in the playoff. So that's a tough game. And so make no mistake about it. Even though those teams are getting a bye, they're still playing a very difficult conference championship game to get that bye in the first place.
Right. And then as Ant VR says, then for the teams that lose that conference championship game but make the playoff, they're going to have to play an extra game. And again, that's, they're not going to get a first round bye because they lose that game, and they're still going to have to play as many games as Notre Dame is going to have to play. So that's, again, that's advantage Notre Dame.
Advantage Notre Dame. Clearly, because they don't have to play in that conference championship game and take the lump of that loss as well.
Because it's not only are you playing in that game, but you're also, because guys are playing in those games, there's always the inherent risk of injury and just anything else that can happen over the course of those games.
Right.
So, a couple other good points that were made up here. Father David says, I'd rather have a home playoff game and not play in a conference championship game than a neutral site game with a bye plus the conference championship game.
Hey, I'm on record. I would much rather have a game in December at Notre Dame Stadium against a group of 5 team or whoever it happens to be.
Right.
Absolutely. I'll take that all day long.
Then Irish AJ said, if the playoff game was this year, Georgia or Alabama would have both made it anyway, win or loss. So that 13th game in certain instances still gets them in the playoff. Yes, but
they still have to play the game.
Again, only, they still have to play the game, and only the winner of that game gets the bye. There's no guarantee of where the other team is going to end up being seated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look at it I think Georgia fell to, what was it? I think they fell from 1st to 6th after losing to Alabama.
I think so.
Something like that. Now, that's going to be curious to me is, there's still, in this case, I think the committee this year had no choice because of where the other teams and their records and all that stuff, but to probably drop Georgia as far as they did. But knowing that there's a 12-team field, I think that there's probably a greater chance that now they couldn't end up in the top 4 again because of the bye situation, the fact that you have to be a conference champ. But say Georgia was unbeaten going in there and they lose a close game to Alabama, and you've got a Notre Dame, for example, 12-0. Who's going to be the number 5 seed? Is it automatically Notre Dame because they're undefeated, or might Georgia snake that spot?
Which
potentially,
that's a fun debate, in my opinion. I have no problem with that debate. You know what I mean? And I think the debate would have been going into that game, who's the number 1 team in the country? Is it undefeated Georgia? Is it undefeated Notre Dame? Right? And yeah, I think that's a fun debate. I'm here for that.
Yeah. Well, I guess a little bit less than a year from now, about 10 months or so from now, we'll be having that. Well,
I would love
we'll be having that specific
the undefeated Notre Dame debate. I would love to have that debate for sure.
Because that's the other thing is when the playoffs expand next year, tonight is January 22nd, but a year from now, because remember we have a leap year and all that.
Leap year.
The national championship game is January 20th. So basically 1 year from now is when the 2025, when the 2024 season, 2025 national championship game will be played. So that's how far back it's been. We're 2 weeks removed.
2 weeks, yeah.
We're 2 weeks removed from the playing of the national championship game. So a year from now is when the next national championship college football game will be.
It's interesting because, they do a good job right now. And I don't even know if this is in any way planned, right? Because yes, college football is a big deal, but the NFL blows college football out of the water when it comes to ratings and all that. It just does. And once college football is over, it's all NFL playoffs. And it's, when you got wild card weekend and you've got 6 games, going on over a span of 3 days. And then you got the divisional round, you got the games that we just had. And then you're going to have you know what I mean? So I don't want to say it's going to take the shine off the NFL playoffs because it's not. The NFL is still king and it always will be. But I am very interested to see the interest level of the 12-team playoff as it's going head-to-head with the NFL playoffs, Sean.
No, I know. And I've kind of been thinking about that and looking at, because what happens when the college football season ends? You start getting NFL games on Saturdays. How's that going to, what's the schedule going to look like when you've got NFL? You're going to have NFL regular season and you're going to have NFL playoff games going on at the same time as, college football playoff games throughout the, late December and into, last weekend would have been the semifinals, the first weekend of the NFL playoffs, for example. What's that going to look like in terms of the schedule? I love how we're getting group texts right in the middle of our show from our boss, but
I'm not cool enough. I didn't get that. At least
you didn't get them?
I don't think
Lucky you, because they pop up on my screen and ding every time that we get one. Could you see one or the other play some Friday night games potentially, as opposed to some Saturday games? Might they be moved around a little bit? Now, we did the windows this past weekend. There were some, because I think we had 4:30 and then 8:00 games and stuff like that. So you could still fit, like a college playoff game into the afternoon and all that.
I'd be okay with afternoon. For the college games. I like college in the afternoon anyway, save the NFL for the nighttime, I guess. I don't know. It's going to be, John says Friday nights are for high school football. There's no high school football in January.
There's no high school football in January. Sorry. We're not talking about November.
No, we're talking about now.
We're talking about December and January.
That was good. That was
yes,
good
look
stuff,
outside. John. There's no high school football being played.
There's none. But no, I do think it'll be very interesting to see how they manage the schedule, because college football would be just stupid to go head to head with the NFL. That would not be smart. You're going to have to schedule around the NFL. And I mean, the NFL just absolutely owns these last 3 weekends. Let's own them. So, what's that going to look like?
Well, and as of right now, the college football playoff games are supposed to stay with ESPN. It's not looking like it's going to be split up, with multiple entities and stuff like that. And so you've got ESPN, ABC, obviously. Now they have like one game in each round of the playoffs, but you do still you could put NFL on ABC just like they did this weekend and still do a college football playoff game at the same time or, a little earlier in the day or whatever.
1 o'clock game, a noon game, 1 o'clock. Like that's.
Yeah. You do run the risk of, and the first round is, and I think I've got, hang on just a second here because I do. I've got the exact schedule if I can find it. It's not popping up right here.
Of course not. When you need it.
Not when I need it.
It's not going to pop up. Why would it?
Well, I'll have to see if I can find it later. I don't know where it went because I see all this.
Do they already have like the dates and stuff like ready to
go?
That's
what I was going to say. They have the dates and what games. I don't know why it's not coming up here, but that's life. But it will make things a little bit trickier.
Yeah, it definitely will.
There's just no way around it.
Because the NFL, I don't think, is going to be cooperative. They're just going to be like, look, here's what we do. You guys figure it out.
And that's what I was going to say. The NFL could easily swallow the whole thing up, basically, because of the NFL playoffs, especially. Like in December, you're still talking about NFL regular season games. So you can work around Sunday.
Right.
And I believe it's going to be like maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday is when those, in the first round games, they'll actually will be a Thursday game or two, if I remember right.
Fine.
Yeah. But again, the later you go, the semifinals and the championship game is going to stay on a Monday. So you don't have to worry about the NFL there. But
I hate that. I hate Monday night. I hate it.
They found their niche, Vince. And again, they avoid the NFL.
I know.
Way. You don't have to worry about Saturday and Sunday. I don't understand why you don't put college football's national championship game on a Saturday.
Yeah.
College football is played on Saturday, and everyone is, especially in the winter, it's like you're home on Saturdays. It seems like a perfect time to do it. You don't have to get up and go to work the next day and all that kind of stuff. But
if we happen to be intimately covering the national championship game, I will not be going to work the next day. So
that's absolutely right.
Whether it's from this chair or elsewhere, I will not be going to work the next day.
So Jacob says, does the college football playoff rank then seed the playoff based on ranks, or are they the same? For example, Notre Dame is the best team in the nation, ranked number 1, but gets a 5 seed because they don't play and win a conference championship game. Yes.
Yes.
So if Notre Dame was ranked the number 1 team in the nation going into conference championship weekend, when the playoffs are announced after the conference championship games, Notre Dame would at best always be the 5 seed, basically.
Yep. And everything else they would drop down to 5, and then everybody else would bump up, and everything else behind them would be what they normally would be. I mean, the only criteria is you got to be a conference champion to have a top 4. And if you're not, then you can't be. And everything else just falls into place behind it. So, yeah, it's easy.
Right. There's another question. I think this was not DK in his only DK way. So 2 college teams will last longer in the playoffs than the Cowboys.
Wow.
I mean,
theoretically,
it happens all the time, right? Like, you can't hurt me, DK.
You can't hurt me.
You can't hurt me any more than Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones have already hurt me.
Right.
So, that's just the way it is.
It's fair.
John, how important is beating Texas A&M on the road?
I got to tell you, I think it's really important, to be honest with you. I hate to put too much stock into game 1 of the season when we literally know nothing about the team from a gameplay standpoint. But I think it's pretty critical at this point because I think it's very much like, I know they're not Ohio State. I know they're not Alabama. I know they're not Georgia. They're still an SEC opponent on the road with a very, very good head coach who has done yeoman's work in the portal to upgrade that roster after the guys have left. And that's a notch on your belt for your schedule. Based on the schedule next year, you can win that game. That could very well be your best win of the season. On the road, game one, who's ready for it? I think this could be similar to Ohio State last year in that it could springboard the rest of your season. And I know that's tough to say after game one, but that is how I feel about Texas A&M. I think this can springboard them in two different directions. You know, if they win this game and they do it in a convincing manner, they're gonna play, and they're gonna play really well the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying if they lose that game, the season's over. I'm not saying that. But if they lose that game, they're gonna have to kind of regroup the wagons and figure out kind of what's going on. You know what I mean? There is no reason Notre Dame should lose this game. There's just not. They have the better roster. They have the better coaching staff. That they should win this game. Period.
Completely agree. And it is important. Of course it's important. You know, it's a road game. You didn't play well on the road this year. You're going to have, as you said, all the things that you just said in terms of the roster and the coaching staff, but you're also going to have a lot, you know, you're going to have the core group back from a great defense, but you're going to have a really completely different offensive two deep depth chart compared to what you had going into this season. Good news, Vince.
Oh, what is it?
I found next year's playoff schedule.
I knew you would.
So December 20th, later this year, one college football playoff game. December 20th is a Friday. December 21st, 3 games. That's a Saturday, obviously, since the 20th is Friday. So the 20th and 21st are the first 4 games. There's 1 game on a Friday, 3 games on Saturday.
Okay.
The 21st.
I'm writing these down because this is intriguing to me.
And now remember that, you know, because like we were talking about conflict with the NFL, that means that there would be minimal NFL conflict. You might have like an NFL game or 2 like that night, maybe something like that, but that's still the regular season. You're not going head to head with NFL playoff games. You're going head to head with NFL regular season games on the 21st, that Saturday. Now, so that is the first round. Quarterfinals, December 31st, 1 game. Not really sure why they're doing it this way. New Year's Eve, they're doing 1 game, the Fiesta Bowl, and that is a Tuesday. Fiesta Bowl on a Tuesday. Next day, New Year's Day, which, you know, I get, it's New Year's Day. 3 games. Peach Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl. Still with me? Semifinals, January 9th and 10th. This is going to be Thursday and Friday, which makes things very interesting. You're going to have Thursday night national semifinal. Let me see. Yeah, 9th and 10th. January 9th on a Thursday, the Orange Bowl. January 10th, the Cotton Bowl on a Friday.
And this is how they're avoiding the NFL. They're doing
this
it on
This is how they're
weekdays.
avoiding the NFL. Yes, I'm glad we found this because this solves all the problems that we were, you know, raising.
And then the
problems.
20th
And then the 20th is the championship game on Monday. So there you go.
So there's no NFL conflict. Dude, I hate to say it. You're telling me I'm going to have high-level football from Tuesday to Sunday, and well, Thursday to Sunday in January, like January 9th. So is that the divisional round? Or no, it won't be the divisional round yet. That'll be the last week of the regular season, right?
Let me think.
The 9th
this
and the 10th?
Year. Oh man. I'm trying to remember.
There's 10 days in between. No, yeah, that would be the divisional round. So you're telling me the divisional round
Week 18 of the NFL season, the final week of the NFL season was January 6th and 7th. Is that what you're asking? Like when the NFL's regular season ends?
So the 9th and the 10th next year, based on what I think the calendar is going to look like, you're going to have Thursday, the Orange Bowl, Friday, the Cotton Bowl, Saturday, you could have two NFL games.
Yeah.
Sunday, you could have 2 to 3 NFL games, and Monday, you're going to have 1 to 2 NFL games. That's 5 straight days of playoff football, essentially.
Yeah. That's
you sign me up for that.
Bonanza, baby. That's
you
right.
Sign me up for that. That sounds friggin' amazing to me. So I guess I'm no longer worried about having to compete with the NFL, and they're not stupid. And they didn't.
And I mean, again, the problem is solved there. You play on a Thursday and a Friday, you don't have to worry about it. That's how you avoid the NFL, obviously. And you've got to, again, they had to kind of space those games out a little bit to make it happen. But I think that also makes sense because as you get a little bit deeper into the playoffs, the games are bigger. You're playing more games than you've ever played before in college. So you're also building in, like a little bit more, rest time. I will be curious to see what happens though, 3 or 4 years from now when New Year's Eve and New Year's Day fall on the weekend. And then you are going to be potentially, you're going to have a decision to make. Are you still going to play those games New Year's Eve and New Year's Day? Or are you going to bump them up again, like to a Thursday or Friday? Like, do Thursdays and Fridays become a little bit more the norm for the playoffs because, of like where New Year's happens to fall and that kind of stuff to avoid the NFL?
Can you imagine?
Because I think you have to. Just look at the ratings. You have to avoid it.
Yes. Can you imagine, Sean, following, let's just say Notre Dame for sake of argument. So Notre Dame wins on Friday the 20th, okay? And so they're moving on to the Rose Bowl, whatever. I'm just making things up.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got to fly out to California for the Rose Bowl, which, that sounds okay, whatever. Then, let's say they win that one, then you've got to fly to either Texas or Florida for the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
And then you get to fly someplace else. Like, that's going to be crazy.
And I think that was one of the, concerns about just how much will college football fan bases travel for multiple games when you're talking about 3-4 games.
I mean, a football fan base like Notre Dame will, because
you're never going to have to worry about a Notre Dame because you've got fans all over the country.
But regional teams, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Lot more difficult.
Right. And like the burden on the families for that matter, how I'm not sure exactly what'll be covered and what won't be covered and stuff like that. And, but then even then it's like, you got to take off work and there's a lot to it. Like if you're someone who's going to try to go to every playoff game, there's a lot of expense and there's a lot of travel and a lot of other factors that you have to.
Those are right in the middle of your
vacation days.
Those are right in the middle of the work week.
Uh-huh.
And usually these big bowl games, it's not a fly in the day before, cover the game, fly out. That's usually not how it goes. You know what I mean? There's days of events and things leading up to it. I mean, that's how these bowl games make money. You've got the parades and you've got the pep rallies and you've got the taking the team here and we're taking the team there and you got to cover it and you got to do all these different, so even from a media perspective, usually for a bowl game, you're down there for like a week anyway. Now that's probably going to truncate, I would imagine, but still there's a lot of question marks about how these things are going to get covered, about how these things are going to just everything, all about it. It's going to be very interesting to see.
For sure. By the way, I wanted to get this in from Ant VR. I'm not sure if he's still here or not. I think she is throwing a couple other questions in. What's the off-season schedule for IB Nation Sports Talk? Basically,
we're here, baby.
Monday through Friday, as long as things work right. What's complicating things right now is my women's basketball schedule, traveling with Notre Dame women, and even there's a ACC women's basketball plays every Thursday and every Sunday. Sunday, obviously, is not an issue for the show, but Thursday, I'm pretty much always going to have a conflict. And if they're on the road, then I'm going to have a conflict Wednesday and Thursday. And in the case of this past week, we stayed out east in Virginia and went straight to North Carolina for the Wake Forest game. So it just, and Vince was sick, so we only had a couple of shows last week. In general, the plan is to have shows Monday through Friday, but it's also depending on who's available to do shows.
Yeah.
So and again, I'm going to be traveling this Friday because they actually have their ACC bye this weekend, but they're playing Saturday night at UConn. So that means we have to travel on Friday. So,
with your buddy on the call.
That's right. Gus Johnson calling the game on TV this weekend.
I hope you sit right next to him.
Have a Gus-gasm.
Yeah, I want to be right there.
Andre said he was at the Notre Dame Wake women's game yesterday and asked if I was there. Yes, I was. He says it was a very pro Notre Dame crowd. Not surprised. I was. If you saw the Notre Dame bench, Andre, I don't know where you were sitting, but if you were looking at the bench, like from the other side of the floor, if you were looking at Notre Dame's bench, I would have been just to the right of the bench. If you were looking at it from behind the bench, I would have been just to the left of the bench.
Oh, so you were right there. You could hear.
You've seen my bulbous, graying, balding head.
Oh, I always identify it.
Yes. So do I when I see the photos.
I know, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but I've decided to take it upon myself to complain about the fact that they always use the TV audio when they're showing highlights on social media by Notre Dame. I don't know why they don't use yours. It makes no sense to me.
I don't know what to say to that.
I got to tell you. And it's completely me doing it. It is not being pushed by Sean Stiers in any way, but I got to tell you, some of the announcers that do these women's games on TV, they're not great. You got great in-house people. Use it.
Didn't have to pay him a dime to say it. I appreciate that.
I'm just disappointed in the Fighting Irish media that they're just it feels lazy to me, Sean. That's what
the level of content, right? I mean, come on.
Just splice it together. Audio, video, splice it together.
Maybe I'm not good enough. I don't know. They've used Burmeister on the football calls. I know that. We all work for the same place theoretically.
Just saying. Just saying.
Do say hello, Andre. I always enjoy it when I'm, walking at a women's basketball game and I get, "Hey, are you Sean Stiers?" And the first thing I want to say is depends.
Yeah, exactly. Who's asking?
But most of them have been IB guys and gals, and that's always fun getting to see some of the people who watch and listen and all that kind of stuff. Carlos, coming up in rapid fire, we'll talk all about.
I haven't asked you about this. I'm interested to see which direction we go on this.
DK, by the way, on the subject of the show, says Jesse could have covered. Take the training wheels off. He's ready. He was actually floating the idea of doing a solo mailbag.
Was he really?
Yeah,
that would have been amazing.
If you want a solo Jesse mailbag, the only issue was, I think by the time he suggested it, I might have been riding a bus on the way to the arena.
Oh, yeah.
So, because I would have to be the one who, gets all the back end stuff set up and how that goes.
So, we can talk about the other stuff, but like his access is not one where he can pull up questions.
That's true. We would have to work on that as well.
Yeah, which we need to do anyway, because he needs to be able to star stuff and like be involved.
Yeah. It definitely helps when we're doing mailbag shows.
Yes.
Like if you and I are doing when you can hit the star.
Yes.
We're getting 100%. In the weeds on making the sausage and all that.
Well, stuff. Still needs to happen.
Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, I'm so ready. My voice is ready. I can tell you that.
I know you're kind of you're wearing down as we grind through this show here.
Yeah.
Your first show back in almost a week.
My solo time in my bedroom Oh, that sounded terrible. Being alone in my room and not talking to anybody for so many days.
Uh-huh.
I had to like retrain myself to talk today. It was very weird. It was very weird. I was like, this does not sound like me.
So Notre Dame staffers dressed up like leprechauns to welcome 2025 recruits to campus over the weekend during the junior recruiting weekend, the big junior weekend bonanza on campus. The leprechaun thing kind of got mixed reviews, at least on social media anyway. Do you buy or sell the move?
So last year they did like the Secret Service thing where they were like patting guys down, and then this time they dressed up. This time they dressed up like leprechauns, and the whole deal. And if I'm being honest, I think both of the ideas are corny and dumb. I do, but the recruits all loved it, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. If they're enjoying it, they're loving it, then I'm loving it too. And if they got to act like fools to make it happen, then so be it. I don't care what everybody else thinks. I only care what these 4- and 5-star kids think. And they loved it. So do it again. Figure out some other corny thing to do next year. I think it was a great idea.
Decaf says kind of corny. And I especially do think like I would have a hard time as a grown man dressing up in a leprechaun outfit, like,
I mean, you're not
and
wrong.
Seeing grown men, it's like, to me, it does feel a little bit cornier than even the Secret Service thing, but you're absolutely right. If the kids love it, which they appeared to love it, who the hell cares what anybody else thinks? That's, you were there because it's a recruiting weekend. You're bringing in recruits. Everything you do is in service to the recruits who are coming on campus. And if they like it,
all that matters.
Who cares what anybody else thinks?
Like when they had
they appeared to have a really good time with it. They appeared to have a lot of fun with it.
Remember when they met those recruits at the airport with like the boom box, and they were doing like dances and acting like absolute idiots, but the recruits enjoyed it. Like, okay, I mean, the livelihood of these adult men are tied to the decisions of these children. And if the children like it and they're going to give their pledge to Notre Dame because of it, I would do it too. I'll just say it. I would do it too.
Yes. Father David says between DK and Vince, the show just got weird.
I mean, that was my bad. I didn't mean to go down that road.
NH though says you do have to have a certain personality
to
pull it off, and I think that the people who are wearing those leprechaun suits have the right personality to pull it off.
Believe me, they didn't pick like the dolt in the corner to like dress up like a leprechaun. I mean, they got guys.
This was not a punishment. Like you have to wear it. Chad Bowden actually wore the leprechaun suit.
Right.
So
there's certain people.
Yes.
Like we used to have a mascot at Home Depot, like Homer, the big goofy looking guy.
That I would have a bigger problem with.
Well, they would have certain people dress up in that costume that they know would be energetic and want to hang out with the fan, the people at the store and that kind of stuff, right? They're not just going to put some idiot who's just going to stand there. You know what I mean? You pick the right people, and that's what they did.
Yes. Tommy asking if his video made it into rapid fire tonight. Tommy, unfortunately, at this point, it's almost like a week old because of when you sent it to me, because we haven't had any shows until tonight. So unfortunately, no, but I believe it was, I believe he sent me the one about the reporter asking Todd Bowles, the Tampa Bay coach, about going to Detroit, and he's like, we play in a dome, right?
That was comedy. And the fact that he let her ask the entire question
he was very polite about it.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Brent, congratulations on your 49ers winning. I will say, gonna have to admit this, literally the first time in my life I have pulled for the 49ers in a game.
Really? And why is that? Did you just not like the Packers, or?
I just decided I'm done with the Packers.
Okay.
With all these playoff losses, they have, it's worse than, anything the 49ers probably, I basically, Joe Montana and the Niners traumatized me when I was still, an early teenager, like at this point, I won't say I'm completely over that, more playoff losses have started to mount that to Green Bay. And so I could not see the Packers. Yes, Bears fans, we can all unite.
Come on over.
What happened over the weekend.
Come on
That's
over.
Right. Yes. So speaking of the recruiting weekend, the recruits, they did their photos, taking pictures in different uniforms during their visit. And one of them was quarterback Brady Smigel, I believe is how you say his name, was wearing the white pants with a green jersey and the white numbers. Rate that look on a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, that's like a 9.75. I think that's a solid look. First of all, I've gone on record as saying they cannot get rid of the white pants, and they need to bring them out more often on the road. Okay, I'm thinking like 1 to 2 times a year. You bring those puppies out for a home game, like a night game, I am on board with that choice. White pants, green top, gold helmet, shimmering in the night. Be a night game. Oh yeah. Just beautiful.
I'm turning it up to 11. It's not just 1 to 10. This one goes to 11. It's
I like it.
It's the perfect uniform, I think. To me,
great.
Is like the white pants with the green top and like you said, then the gold. It's basically the green uniforms that they wore when they wore the against Ohio State, except they're substituting the green pants for white pants. It's
simple.
It's a very clean, simple look. It is as good as I think as you're going to get. It needs to make an appearance, I think, next year.
Yes. I will also say the white on white against the snow was a good look too. Like that was a really, really cool look as well. But yeah, the green on white that we've all been hoping for, and we've seen people mock it up and all of that. It's beautiful. It was even more beautiful in person.
Yep. Oh, fill in the blank. It's blank that Tommy Rees is reportedly in talks to be hired as the Cleveland Browns tight ends coach.
Interesting, I guess, is the best word for it. Like I don't look at this as necessarily a demotion per se, but it is. I mean, he's going to be a position coach, but he's going to the NFL. And I think, I don't know Tommy personally. I've always been under the impression NFL was the goal, right? And it also said he's going to be the tight ends coach with some pass game responsibilities. Right. He's going to help coordinate the pass game, right? I think it's one step closer to being OC in the NFL, and I think that's what he wants to do. So I don't look at this as everybody's like, went from Notre Dame, and then he got kicked out of Alabama. Okay, you can rewrite history however you want it. That's fine. Where do you go after being the OC at Alabama and Notre Dame, like at the college level? Where do you go? Because I don't.
Well, and where you can go is based on the availability of
jobs that are open,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
there's like the rumor about, the rumor started about, he's going to be OC at Georgia and all that different. And obviously that was nothing but a rumor started by, but there's somebody without a name on a Twitter handle,
of
basically.
Course.
But
there's only so many jobs you can take at the college level that wouldn't be a step down, right? And if your goal is to make it to the
especially
NFL,
if you were at Alabama. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's
literally
what I'm saying.
Almost everyone is a step down from there.
You were OC at Notre Dame, you're OC at Alabama. The next job at the college level is either going to be a huge step down or you go to the NFL. I think now is his time to make that jump to the NFL. And he's going to do it with a quasi coordinating role as well.
Yeah.
So,
I was literally thinking if we would have had a show, I think Jesse and I were going to talk, or it might have come up on the Friday wrap, but just like if we would have had a show after Tuesday last week, Tommy, the topic of Tommy was going to be on the docket. Where is he going to go? And my thought at that point, because of, again, like getting at least a lateral move to another offensive coordinator spot in college was going to be tricky, because of what you talked about. It's like who and the kind of opportunities. Would you have had to take a step down? My thought was maybe the NFL as a quarterback's coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of what does he want to do? Just like what you said, like I think we've all kind of had in our head that he ultimately wants to be like at the very least an NFL offensive coordinator, if not an NFL head coach. So this gets him to the NFL. He's a tight ends coach for now. As like you said, he's going to have some passing game responsibilities, so that keeps him more involved than just coaching tight ends. And maybe it turns into, within a year or two, at least a quarterback's coach type thing, if not an offensive coordinator within a couple of years. It gets him on the path to where he wants to be as an NFL coach. So I think it's great. Yeah. It's a great move for him.
And I originally said, look for him to go back to LSU. It's not go back, but go back with Kelly at LSU. But then I forgot how that all went down, to be honest with you. That bridge was burnt, folks.
I think that ship sailed.
That bridge was burnt, and it was set afire like with a flamethrower. When he turned down the offer to go down to LSU, there was no going back. I mean, that was never going to happen again. And the way that it was handled on one side was not very professional, and it just was not going to happen again.
And it wasn't from Tommy's side in terms of.
All right, I wasn't going to say it. I was just going to say one side, but all right.
What we understand, it wasn't from Tommy's side. Yes.
Right.
Just leave it at that, I guess.
Yeah. So
DK was not very happy when Tommy turned him down and stayed here at Notre Dame.
That door was not opened this time around, I wouldn't think. Even if it was in Brian Kelly's best interest, which I think it probably would have been, that door was not going to be opened.
Right. Absolutely. Fill in the blank. It's blank. The Chiefs stopped a Bills fake punt last night with just 10 men on the field on defense, and the chief who made the tackle was Drew Tranquill.
Unbelievable. I mean, you can't write that script.
There's some serendipity here, right?
Yeah. You think? I mean, look, every time I hear 10 men on the field, I will always think Ohio State, Notre Dame, and that will never change. That will never change for the rest of my life. And so I hear that, I think, oh, Notre Dame, and Drew Tranquill makes the tackle. Crazy.
By the way, before I forget, Anthony, thank you very much for the super chat and for the comment there as well. But yeah, it's like when it ended up being Drew Tranquill make it, when they were you watching the game when that happened live by any chance?
No. Okay. Well, I had it on, but I didn't see that exact play.
The crazy thing is Jay Feely, a freaking kicker. It was the sideline reporter. You got Romo and Nance up in the booth. Jay Feely, the sideline reporter, is the one who had to point out the fact that the Chiefs only had 10 men on the field. It's like, hello, Tony Romo, serious? Where are you? Like,
wow.
you are, one of the two highest paid analysts in the game. So Feely points it out, but then when they said that Drew Tranquill made the stop with 10 men on the field, it's like the first thing you think about is Notre Dame, Ohio State, 10 men on the field, and a Notre Dame guy made the stop. And then, to kind of add to it, Damar Hamlin is the guy who was the ball carrier on that play. And of course, the Hamlin stuff from last year, with the health and they had to stop the game and, him being out as long as that's the guy who was the ball carrier. And he's a guy who never sees the ball, but the Chiefs blew it up, and it was a Notre Dame player with 10 men on the field who actually made the stop on the play.
Yes. Who knew? The Notre Dame's hype man, by the way, of former players, Drew Tranquill.
Yes. The Chiefs fumbled through the end zone last night in that game. Of course, after 3 plays after that fumble, they fumbled through the old fumble through the end zone at the 1 yard line, which makes it Buffalo Bills ball. It makes it a touchback. So Notre Dame alum and Seattle defensive back Julian Love said on X last night, love the touchback rule. There's already enough rules that favor the offense. So Vince, do you buy or sell what Julian Love is saying?
It was a huge turning point in that game. Eric, it should have been a huge turning point in that game. I mean, the Chiefs were about to cement that thing and just put it away, and they end up fumbling through the end zone. It's like, wow. I mean, because you knew what was going to happen. I don't get as outraged about this rule as others do. It's always been a rule.
Just because it's always been a rule. You're just over it now.
I'm numb to it. Like, we don't see Don Beebe bringing up some bad memories for you, I suppose. But
well, the
they
Cowboys
won the
still
Super
won
Bowl.
that game,
They did win the game. But yeah, I mean, that play is not etched in history if that doesn't happen. Like, I don't know. It doesn't bother me. It's never bothered. Maybe because my team has never been on the negative end of that particular play in a big moment, but like, it's just never bothered me. So it doesn't bother me. I agree with Julian Love. Keep it the way it is.
Yeah, it's funny because, all the controversy in that Cowboys-Lions game a few weeks ago was what? It was, did the guy, the tackle eligible report and all that stuff. Well, earlier in the game, if CeeDee Lamb crosses the goal line with the football in his hands, it's a touchdown. But he did the same thing. He fumbled through the end zone and it comes back. Not exclusive to that play. I'm just pointing it out, but I've just always felt like what did the defense do other than maybe jar the ball loose that they should be rewarded with having the ball in that situation? I've just never got why it becomes an automatic turnover. And, I guess the USFL, which of course is disbanded now, like the USFL did a thing where the offense does get the ball back. I've just always thought like, okay, it's loss of down. You give the offense the ball back, but it's at the 20-yard line instead of, the one or the, wherever the fumble happened to occur. You move them back. So it's like the next down. And if it was a fourth down play, then the defense does take the ball. But any other play, move it back at the 20. I've just never understood why the defense gets rewarded so greatly for really not doing that much. It's basically a fluke play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I just wonder why they came up with that particular rule in the first place, to be honest.
It's a good question. Good question. So after watching Bills kicker Tyler Bass miss the 44-yard field goal attempt near the end of the loss to Kansas City last night, Ross Tucker says kickers have no place in football. Vince, do you buy or sell that? Ross, of course, former NFL offensive lineman.
Of course, it's a huge sell. It's called football. You got to use your feet on the ball sometime.
One of the few times they actually use their feet in football.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, there's been kickers involved in football forever, like since day one. Why would you X out a part of the game because you don't think anybody is good at it or you don't think that they're real football? I listened to what he had to say, his whole spiel. And he basically said kickers aren't football players. We don't expect them to run and kick or run and pass and throw and do all these other things. He's taking the
Reggie Brooks approach. Right. Old friend Reggie Brooks, notoriously hard on kickers and punters over the course of his career.
Are the same things expected of a kicker as regular football players? No, it's not. But who's the first one to get on a punter for missing a tackle once the kick returner or the punt returner has gone through the other 10 guys, right? They're expected to be able to tackle, right? They're expected to be football players every now and again. And so it's a part of the game. You don't have to like it, but it's still a part of the game.
Bryce McPherson saved a touchdown once this season. Remember that? When he ran down that guy?
My son saved 2 touchdowns this year by making tackles. Okay. Nice. So, you can still be an athlete and be a football player. Just because his fat butt can't kick the ball between the poles, don't be disparaging other guys for doing it.
I mean, everyone on a football team has a different job. An offensive lineman has a different job than the quarterback or wide receiver or
most of the time they don't even touch the ball, period.
Right. Like as an offensive lineman, your job is to block. As a kicker, your job is to kick. As a quarterback, your job is to, get in and out of the right plays, whatever it happens. Everyone's got a different job.
Absolutely.
You can't just disregard a kicker because once in a while he misses one. Like what about the times that he actually wins a game that maybe you had no business winning because he made a great kick of, like 55, 60 yards or whatever it happens to be. So kickers are people too. And they're football players too. You got to stand up for them every now and then. Come on.
I will say that football is one of the sports where for position by position is the most different on a football team, right? I mean, you look at any other sport, soccer, baseball, basketball. Yes, they have different positions and they have different responsibilities. but there's not much out there that's as different as a football player, from a lineman to a quarterback to a running back to a kicker, whatever. Those are some seriously different body types and some seriously different expectations from, start to finish. And that's what makes football great.
I agree. Are you going to make it, Vince? You're kind of
I'm struggling, but we're good. We're good.
All right. Woo! We're coming down the home stretch.
All right.
So Iowa women's basketball star Caitlin Clark got trucked yesterday by a fan storming the court after Ohio State upset Clark and the Hawkeyes. So first question, block, charge, or flop?
Flop. Flop. Did you see all the angles of it today?
I did. I've seen them all.
I don't see.
She looks a little like the whole thing.
Yeah, and she her head goes snaps back, and then she's laying on and then she has to be helped off the court. Like, you are a the best women's basketball player, arguably, in the country, an athlete, a D1 athlete, and you just got taken out by a girl who is charging the court with her phone in the air. Like, I'm sorry. It didn't look that bad to me.
That's what it was, right? It's like, I'm running and I'm doing my, that's the biggest problem here is everyone with their stupid phones. Like, get off your phone. So to that, I'm still going to go charge. It was definitely a charge. It was an awkward looking fall to the floor. I will definitely say that. But she did go to the floor pretty hard, and she was hit pretty hard in the whole. It's like, but the look of the thing, you can't get past the look when you see her kind of pirouette a little bit, throw her hands in the air.
Yes,
and
she was like, ah.
There was, I don't know that it was a complete flop, but there was some elements of a flop in there. But I've still got to call charge.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I guess not charge. That would be block, right? Because
who's on offense there?
Yeah,
I don't even know. They're both moving.
Yeah, that's right. So she did have to be helped off the floor. Where do you stand on the whole court storming? Are you pro? Are you against? Where are you?
Well, this is like the old man in me coming out. Like, as I get older, I feel like I've seen most things, and so storming a court or a field is ridiculous for the most part for me. I'm not a big fan of it in general.
Is this because you have to do crowd control at, like high school games now? Is
that's part of it? But I will also say, when I was a kid, when I was in college, like, I couldn't wait to storm the field. You know what I mean? Like, that was what we wanted to do. And so I get it from a student standpoint, right? I get it. I'm not a big fan of it. I guess as I get older into adulthood, I don't know. It just seems like it happens too much. And when something happens too much, it takes away the fun of it for me.
Well, see, and to me, I don't really do think it happens I think 95% of the time, everything is okay. But then especially when you have a high profile, literally the most high profile women's basketball player gets run over like this after what was a great game one. It was an overtime game and, the whole thing. Like, one of the first big experiences of the Notre Dame women's 2001 national championship run. By the way, the anniversary was just last Monday, a week ago today, Martin Luther King Day. But the crowd stormed the floor after the game, and it was one of the coolest things ever. It's like Notre Dame beats Connecticut. The students rush the floor, and it's just, it was like a great scene, and everyone's having fun and excitement. I do realize that sometimes things like this can happen. I think that they need to find a way to, like, if you're the opposing team and you see, players storm, like, they need to come up with sort of a procedure. Like, here's what you need to do if this happens, like shelter in place and, wait for everyone to go.
Just like head to the scores table.
Yeah.
And then once everybody's out there
or something,
you get out of there. Who wants to practice when you lose on the road?
Yeah. Like, you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but at the same time, it's like,
and it wasn't malicious by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You want to see the students have fun, and that, then I'll save that one. Fill in the blank.
Okay.
it's blank that after the massive success of Top Gun Maverick, Top Gun 3 is now reportedly in development.
Disappointing.
I think that's before you even said disappointing. Just the response was, I think we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, because look, I thought Top Gun Maverick was aces. Like, it was really good.
It was as close to perfection as you're going to get. Especially after waiting 30 plus years for a sequel to come out.
Absolutely, because you had Iceman in there, and obviously that's probably not going to happen again.
You're not going to get Ice again.
You got, I mean, how long is Maverick going to be a captain? I mean,
right.
They did a good job of explaining it up to this point. I get it. He would get up and then he would get knocked down. He'd get up, the whole thing. And Maverick would be there to save. I mean, Iceman would be there to save his butt every time. It was a great story. It was a great movie. I just watched it again the other day, actually. Great story.
I watched it during the second half of the Cowboys losing to the Packers.
There you go. I mean, it was a great movie. Let it go. Leave well enough alone.
But you knew they couldn't, because it made more than $500 million.
I know, but do you think this was going to do that too?
You knew that they were going to try to go back to the well. And that's,
man,
again, they had 30 years to get it right and get the story right. And Tom Cruise had to sign off on it. And they did everything right. All the beats that connected back to the original, all this different stuff. They found just the right mix of nostalgia that wasn't, like over the top corny and stuff like that. But now it's like they always say, like a musical artist has their whole life to write the first album. And then they've got to come out with the second album, like in 10 months, basically, if the first one was successful. And what always happens, the sophomore album, the second one is always like, there's typically a lot more mixed reviews with the second one. And it's the same way here. You had 30 years to get the second one right. And now you're going to, try to crank something out in a couple of years. And I just can't see them coming anywhere close. Like, I can't even imagine what the storyline could be, like to try to follow up the first one. And like you said, it's like, how long can Maverick stay a captain when everyone else his age is an admiral now, So.
Exactly. I mean, and look, I realized Tom Cruise is ageless, and it was a great movie. It was a great movie. But in order, what do you need for a good Top Gun movie? You need Maverick to be, on the verge of getting kicked out of the Navy. Well, he should have been retired, so that should be gone. He needs to have a love interest. Thought he just had a love. I thought they were settling down.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and you've got to have some sort of a conflict, with personal life and the whole thing. And you had that with Goose and his son and the whole, like, where do you go from here? I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't either. I'm not a fan. I guess Tom Cruise has still got to sign off on this whole, so it's not a done deal yet. Like, to me,
to make another Mission Impossible movie.
I mean, I was going to say, like, he's found a way to keep that Mission Impossible thing going for as long as it is. Don't ruin Top Gun by pushing something out too soon.
Yeah. Like, even my wife liked it, and that's saying something. So you can't mess with that kind of perfection, man.
I know. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Vince has got to recoup once again. He might be back Wednesday. I don't know. At this rate,
gonna go gargle some salt water.
Your recovery time, is like you need a little bit longer. It sounds like in between these days.
And I didn't realize that until I started talking today. So we'll see what, when part of your job is just talking the whole time. Makes it interesting.
Right. All right, so that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to Vince for coming back around, working it through.
Yeah.
Hopefully mailbag show on Wednesday. We'll be here for you.
Love it.
All right. Subscribe, rate, review, hit the like button before you leave. We'll talk to you later.